All right, welcome everybody to this episode of Breaking Absolutes. It's really exciting today for me to get to talk to Michael Romeo. I've been a fan of his for a long, long time. The opportunity to talk to him presented me with an opportunity to go back and kind of listen through to his work from the beginning. And as I like to do, I'm going to kind of chronicle that. We can't possibly cover it all, but we'll touch on points of it to come up to his new release that's forthcoming in March, the War of the Worlds Part 2. If you're not familiar with the show, my whole deal is I'm a musician and composer myself. I do the show largely because I feel like there's a lot of pigeonholing with artists inside this genre that are doing important work, like really great music that deserves a broader audience. And that's what I hope to tease out as I talk to the people I do. So today I'm talking to Michael Romeo, and just a couple of sparklers about his career for those folks who may not know or have not sort of looked at the body of his work in a long time. He founded the progressive metal band Symphony X. You can't look at any roll-up of meaningful progressive metal bands without seeing the name Symphony X. That's not exaggeration. He's been ranked, and I know that these things may be subjective, but from sort of meaningful journalistic outlets, he's been ranked in the top 100 heavy metal guitarists by Guitar World. He's worked with the likes of Arion. We've had Arion on the show, and I think we know the kind of caliber of talent that Arion chooses to work with to make his music. So I think that says something about Michael. Their album, The Divine Wings of Tragedy, has been listed in top 500 rock and metal records by Rock Hard Magazine. That was 17 in top progressive metal albums, so you get the point there. They've charted several times, in particular with Paradise Lost and Iconoclast. They've hit the Billboard charts. They reached number one on Billboard's Heat Seeker with Paradise Lost. The Iconoclast album hit number 7 on the top hard rock chart. I mean, I could go on and on here, but you kind of take my point that the industry has acknowledged the work here. And so with that as my preamble, let me bring Michael on and we'll start our chat. Michael, welcome.
Hey, man. What's up? That's a lot of stuff right there. I didn't even know half of that stuff.
Dude, man,
I'm learning something.
I didn't even read it all.
Oh, shit.
I partly because I want to respect your time, and I think we have an hour. So
whatever, man. We got whatever you need.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Well, then maybe I'll come back to some of these chart positions as we walk through some of the Symphony X catalog. But it's important to me because I think when you start to say those things out loud, it starts to kind of accrete to something more. Those happen as moments of time in your career. But I get to sit there and look back at this stuff as I prepare to talk to you. So, but let's start with a couple of things. You're not the only guy to sort of take and infuse your music, some of it anyway, with classical influence. But you are a guy, as I started to read more about you, like it's like the breadth of classical composers that you actually pay attention to, not just as a matter of you listed an influence somewhere, but that you include as in your interpretations of their music and pieces and passages of your songs is a little bit more, a little deeper. And I'm wondering if I'm reading more into that, or if like you have some sort of background or not necessarily training, but like affinity for classical music that you can tell us about.
No, I mean, I totally do. I mean, I love that stuff. Even when I was young, there was something about classical music. There was something about film music, being a young kid and seeing Star Wars and hearing that music and the power of that kind of stuff. And as I got older, being open to different kinds of composers and different kinds of music, not just Beethoven and that stuff. When I was younger, maybe I was familiar with getting into later composers, Stravinsky and Bartok and some of these things. And of course, John Williams and guys like Hans Zimmer and some of the film stuff, because there's a lot of classical, especially Williams, a lot of that kind of stuff in there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I always love that stuff. I mean, I'll be down here hanging out and maybe I'll have on some Sabbath and then maybe I'll have on some Stravinsky after that. So, I mean, I do love all that stuff.
Yeah.
Um, and I've always studied it too. I've always studied it in orchestration, and with the band, yeah, we would always touch on some of these orchestral kind of things. And with the solo record, yeah, I just wanted to be a little more of that, a little more of the cinematic orchestration with guitar and infused in the songs and that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, I mean, I've always loved that stuff and always like to learn about it and try to make it a part. Doing a record or doing any kind of music, just trying to put that all together. And it could be, yeah, it could be the real classical guys, or it could be more modern guys or film guys, or it could be electronic guys and all the metal stuff I grew up with. I mean, there's just so much really good music.
Yeah.
I just try to cram it all in one place and hope for the best.
Well, let me pay you this compliment. I also, in part of my life, I'm a writer, and one of my favorite writers makes this comment. He says, "You don't go slumming in someone else's genre." The meaning of that is that, if horror books all of a sudden become really popular, but you're not a horror writer, if you just try and go write a horror book, you're kind of slumming to try and capture an audience.
Mm.
I say that the context of that is that with you, and I'm not going to name names. There's a lot of players, and they've got great technical facility, who make use of classical music, and some of them do it well. But there's a lot of them where it feels like it's affected. Your work never feels that way. Your work, it feels like there's an authentic appreciation for it, which matters to me because I like that kind of music too. But you do. I just wanted to say it out loud. You do a phenomenal job. And not just by the way, hey, I'm going to play a passage of this or that, but like using the style and interpreting it through the way you write music. And we'll talk more about that with your new record. But I wanted to say that up front so I didn't forget.
No, and I get it, man. I mean, this is stuff that, like I'm not slumming. I mean, this is the stuff that I like, and this is the stuff, if I'm writing, that I'm inspired by.
That's right.
And I want to learn about it, and I want to be able to, yeah, I mean, not rip it off, but borrow and learn about some of these techniques and then put it into your own stuff. So I mean, it's legit, man. I mean, it's legit.
You can tell, like you can tell, even without the references to these artists or even real familiarity with the genre, it never feels borrowed. So kudos to you on that, because I don't think that's easy. That may be a gift of yours, but it's not an easy thing. There's another thing about a lot of your music that I love, and this is a bias of mine, and followers of the show will know this, but you are not afraid to tackle big thematic narrative ideas. I mean, let me just say a few out loud for people. John Milton's Paradise Lost and Paradise Regained, Dante Alighieri's Inferno. Like I was an English major, so like I'm just like freaking out as I'm going through all this stuff. Lewis Carroll's Through the Looking Glass, which is of course a follow on from Alice Ventures in Wonderland. Homer's Odyssey. I mean, there's just not many stories bigger than these. Paradise Lost, the Orpheus in the Underworld, which is also another Dante, and then of course the H.G. Wells stuff, these big science fiction themes that have like these macro ideas in them. I'm curious to know if you're a reader or if you're more like experiencing these through film. Like what draws you to them as sort of narrative inspiration?
I think, there's a couple things. There's a couple things about that whole idea for me, that way of working. I read a little bit. I'm not, total book guy, and I love movies, so there's that. And I think for me, if I'm trying to write, I'm trying to find something kind of to write about, and I think that goes back to when I was a kid and watching these movies and this big music, and it paints this big picture, and Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, and this big epic, music's fantastic. So I think that always stuck with me. So if I'm trying to write, I think it's easier for me too when there's like a goal or some kind of blueprint. It's like, okay, with the solo record, it's like, okay, I knew I wanted it to be, obviously metal. I wanted it to be heavy and a little
Sure.
bit of prog rock, and I did want a lot of this cinematic with the guitar and these kind of orchestral things, maybe hinting at Williams a little bit, and Holst, that kind of thing. So again, I'll try to find a story, and I try to find a story that's kind of like everybody knows. Most people know War of the Worlds or Paradise Lost or the Odyssey, and these kind of classic tales that we have.
Yeah.
So for me, that it's just a lot of inspiration, and I'll start to have visuals if I'm writing something, and it's like, oh, this kind of thing. And in the Odyssey, it's like, oh, this is where this happens, and this music can be a little more dark and aggressive here, and then it's nice here. So for me, just to write, it's just I find it easier. I find it inspiring too, because it's like you said, there's these grand topics, these big epic things, and then you're just trying to set music to it.
Yeah.
And with War of the Worlds, it's like, yeah, it wasn't concept record. It's like, I want to tell this story exactly how it is. It was more like, well, that's the theme of it. Lyrically, man, it's a little bit about this. It's really a them or us, them versus us kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it could be interpreted in different ways. But I think the music, that's where I start. Find some kind of topic. It's like, yeah, man, this feels right. It's something I could work with. And then let me start, busting my ass and trying to come up with stuff that's right.
Well, it's I was actually going to ask you that very question with the new record, because I got a chance to listen through to it. I'll have to tell you, I don't I'm not easy with my praise, but this is a record that as soon as I always listen start to finish. I hate to cherry pick tracks, and as soon as I spun it once, I immediately respun it. It's a great record, and we're going to go deeper on it. But the thing that came to me while I was listening to it is, it seemed like an inspired by versus I'm not going to do a plot points, but it's these larger ideas, this us versus them, and some leaning in on that theme. Some of these tracks just deliver really like visceral music against those themes. So I think you succeeded there, at least for this listener.
Thanks.
Yeah. And the last thing I want to say before we get into some specifics is I listen to a ton of progressive metal and progressive rock, a lot of guys with a lot of technical facility, and even can do that and do it musically. But one of the things that I always listen for, which I call a third gear, is particularly with guitar players, is someone can use all of that in service of the song, in service of melody that is communicating the song, not just as a function of demonstrating ability or even a musical line. You sit in rarefied air, in my view, in guitarists who hit that third gear. And I'm going to talk about that with some of the actual tracks. But again, I say some of these things when I'm thinking them, so I don't forget. So let's start just real quickly with collaborations. We've had Ariane on. You've done some work with him. How did that eventuate? Did he reach out to you because he's heard your music and he just wanted to collaborate? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the first one, oh man, it was going way, way back. And, yeah, I mean, he just contacted me, and I mean, obviously, of course, I knew about him.
Yeah.
And, he's like, oh man, if you could, do a solo on this track. I was like, I'm like, yeah, of course, no problem.
Yeah.
And then over the years, we go to Europe, and, we see him over there, chat for a bit. And then recently, a few months back, or I don't even know, it was a while ago. I'm losing track of time with all this insanity going on.
Yeah.
But and again, he contacted me. He had the new record, and he said, "Oh man, this would be a great solo section here for you." And so yeah, I mean, fires over some tracks, and I do my best, and hopefully everybody's happy.
Was this the Star One record?
This last one,
or was it he's got a record that just dropped called Star One. There's a track called Revel in Time. Was that the one? Do you remember?
Oh, what was the title of it? Oh.
I may have it wrong. I think I saw that it was Revel in Time, and I know that like you're so busy that asking you to remember titles.
Yeah, I'm not that busy. It's just like the whole time. The whole time thing is just like it's like, yeah,
Yeah. Time
everything's like,
dilation inside COVID.
it's totally out of whack, man. Like, just, yeah.
Yeah.
But whatever the latest thing that he had put out recently, yes, it's that.
Yeah. I think it's that. And there've been others. Um, again, that's, I think, a great nod, because Arian's kind of in a position to choose people he likes to work with. So
Yeah.
that's very cool. But you've also worked with Steve Walsh. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shadow Man, his solo album there. You did some
Dude,
orchestration there.
I gotta tell you, man, it's like, I'm a huge Kansas fan.
Yeah.
I, like, always was, huge Kansas fan. And we were playing somewhere, and they came to see us. Right? Is that how that went down? Yeah. So I got to meet the guys and, chatted, exchanged some stuff. And then, I don't know, a couple years later, whenever it was that Steve was going to do his thing, and he contacted me. And yeah, I mean, he wanted me just to do some of this more orchestral and some arranging kind of stuff, so it's just a different thing. But I'm like, I mean, I love, again, talking like we were just talking about, I love doing all that stuff. And, he's in Jersey where I'm at, and he's down in the studio sitting next to me. And like, I had to friggin', I had to think about it for a minute of like, oh my God, I was like, fucking Steve Walsh just hanging out, because I was such, I'm trying not to be fanboy,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, those bands that I grew up with and that I learned so much from, Kansas and Rush and ELP, such a big part of, of just, when I'm writing, there's always some of that coming out. There's always some of that thing. So that was a cool, and then I ended up doing, for their tour that they were doing, and I did this for fun. I took a lot of the Kansas themes, Dust in the Wind. I mean, just a bunch of stuff I could find, because they have so many great thematic things. And I just did like this little orchestral, like a Disney Fantasia, this little kind of little piece, like a little medley kind of thing. And I sent it to them, like, hey guys, I was just, having some fun. And I think it was Phil or Steve, one of them reached out, and they're just like, oh man, we're going to use this is going to open the show, So then I go to see him, and it's like playing, the thing. And I'm like, wow, this is fucking cool.
Yeah. How cool. Yeah.
I mean, it's just cool stuff like that, it's like, yeah, shit's all messed up now with it. But there's things like that along the way that, that it's like, yeah, man, there's some good times in there,
Yeah. Those chances you get to work with sort of musical heroes are some of the dividends, right? Of all of the hard work. Last one I want to mention, and I hope I don't slaughter his name, but Vitali.
Vitali, yeah.
Yeah, I see him. I've seen TSO countless times on the West Coast tour, and he's always up there just flailing on the keyboard like madman.
Yeah. I remember, I think the first thing he wanted me to play on, and it was like I think it was not a Beethoven thing. I mean, again, going way, way back.
Yeah.
And it was some insane, and I'm like, oh, all right, yeah, give me a minute. Give me a minute. But yeah, it's cool. That's why it's cool sometimes. I mean, so used to like with the band and what we're working on and what, how we're operating. And then there's something else that's totally different.
Yeah.
Kind of comes in and it's cool, kind of get away from the normal thing. Like with Steve Walsh thing. Yeah. I mean, no guitar really. It was more, a different kind of record, it was a different kind of thing that he was doing. So doing some of these orchestrations or with Vitali or any of these guys, it's like, oh, there's a little bit more of this classical and really, technique kind of stuff. So that's cool, man, bouncing around a little bit in different things,
Yeah, I always call those palette cleansers. Like you can get pretty narrowly focused on something of necessity, but sometimes it's really healthy to be able to break and do something different. The last question I have on that is, when you do those, are you given some license to, or are you given like very prescriptive, here's what we want or is it changed based on the collaboration?
No, I mean, usually it's like, I mean, I think I'm pretty good at, like, if I hear something, like, I kind of know what is right. I mean, and then if it's not, like, obviously someone will be like, hey man, maybe blah 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 blah.
Yeah, yeah,
But no, I think, and knowing the guys and knowing what they do, what the right approach might be. So
yeah,
I mean, luckily it's always been smooth, and I think if someone's asking me, if they're asking me to do something, they kind of know what I do. So it's like, and
yeah,
again, like with the solo record, it's like, knowing what um, Macaluso, his drum style, or JD on bass, and it's like, well, here's kind of my idea, and I know what you guys can do. So yeah, make your own thing. Don't stray from what the song is.
right.
Don't go totally left field somewhere.
Yeah,
But
but you're
yeah,
working.
do what you do.
Yeah,
Do what you do.
you're working with someone who, you can kind of turn them loose a little bit because you trust, they're what they do, as you say, and you can kind of trust that they'll stay focused
And I
somewhat.
and I think and the end result is always really good too, because it's like,
Yeah,
yeah, they're putting in that, with Dino, with the new album and the vocals, and he's a fantastic singer, phenomenal.
yeah,
And but again, it's like, I'll have the melody, I'll have a basic idea of the melody, and I'll be humming it in whatever, or whatever it is, and but it's like, okay, here's my basic thing. Now run with the ball. Maybe I go up on this melody. Maybe you feel like it should go down. Maybe you're hearing a harmony or something. So it's like, yeah, man, go do your thing. Don't go too far.
yeah.
But and usually when the end result is like, yeah, I mean, you can feel there's something about the energy there.
Yeah, I think when you give, I've done some work like that, and I think when you give just enough latitude for someone to do a little bit of creation in there, they get a little bit invested in it. Versus
Yeah.
if it's like, hey, sing this exact line, this exact way, that's robotic. And there are places. Again, we're going to get deeper into the record. I just have some things I want to go over. But there are places in the record I want to ask you where it sounds as if Dino's just caught up in the music and he's doing some shit that's just like,
Hopefully, yeah. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
hopefully that's that's what happens.
Well, that's the vibe. There are places where the vibe is that he's just loving the hell out of singing on the track, and there's some things that feel like he's doing some scatting or some other stuff that may or may not have been written, or maybe have, but
Yeah, and usually those kind of little improv-y things, or a little, here's the end of the song and there's a little ad-libbing going on.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
go, do it, do whatever you feel.
yeah. All right, let's talk a little bit about. I mean, we can't not talk about Symphony X a little bit, right?
Of course.
Must. So one quick, I don't want, and you can't cover it all. That'd take us forever. But there's some places I want to stop and visit a little bit. One's a simple one with Damnation Game. Were you ever a reader of Clive Barker?
I was familiar. I was familiar. Yes.
He wrote a great novel. I just wondered if that was a thematic tie.
And I don't really know that novel. I mean, I think I have, like, what I have, maybe is it Books of Blood or something?
That was the first ones. Yeah, man.
I got them floating around somewhere here. Yeah. I'm, I mean, again, friggin' movies and some books and, horror. I'm a horror guy too. I love all that stuff. So, yeah.
Oh,
sure.
well, I have to ask you then, like, what's a favorite horror film? Because I was a big horror fan for years.
It depends, though. It depends, like, what kind of horror we're talking. Like, is like slasher horror, or like,
no, something that's more dread, like more like in your emotions.
Oh man. All right, let me see if I could get my top couple.
Put you on
like
the spot.
No, man. I mean, I could rattle them off, dude. I'll just try to think. Growing up, yeah, Psycho, obviously.
Yeah.
And The Exorcist and The Omen. The Omen was my favorite of that bunch. The original Omen.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
And again, the music with the chanting. Oh man, freaking right on point. Yeah, but I mean, even like Silence of the Lambs or Jaws is maybe more of a thriller, but still, I mean, it's.
Oh, there's definitely a horror element there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that one of the things that you note about those is the soundtracks. I have this debate. I know you're a Star Wars guy. I have this debate. I'm doing a big collaboration with a fantasy writer by the name of Brandon Sanderson, and I have this debate with him that Star Wars would not have been the success it is without that soundtrack. Like if you'd put
Absolutely
one of those
correct.
cheesy '80s things like St. Elmo's Fire on top of
Oh
that,
God. Oh God. Can you
can
imagine?
you imagine?
Oh shit. Oh, bro.
Uh, and I know
No.
that it's archetypal storytelling and very good storytelling, but I just think it would be this weird campy thing for filkers if
Yeah.
it had been '80s soundtrack.
Yeah,
Um,
dude, you are, I mean, so right. And I mean, at that time too, looking back, I mean, even though I was really young, like, yeah, super young, a lot of those movies in the 70s, a lot of the music was starting to go into the jazz kind of stuff and like Taxi Driver, and even as Bernard Herrmann, another one of my favorite guys who did Psycho. And then you kind of had a lot of that jazzy kind of stuff, and the music was there, but it was just like kind of doing its thing. And then freaking Star Wars comes out, and I remember just being,
yeah,
being a kid in the movies, and it's like here comes this big thing, and that music was like holy shit. It was just like bam,
yep,
you know.
yeah,
And that
yeah.
and it was ever since then, man. I just fell in love with that stuff.
Well, and his use of musical motifs for characters to signal their entrance and stuff,
No,
like it was, yeah, I love it, but I can just listen to the soundtrack, as much as I love the movie and still be moved by it. Um, the first, just as an aside, the first soundtrack made me take note. I was a pretty young kid, but was Bill Conti's for Rocky.
no, yeah, ah,
I was like, where'd this come from? And it had all this
yeah,
great
dude.
triumphant music, but then it had some of that street like harmony stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Again, like the perfect music for
right.
the perfect movie, that marriage, and then it's like golden.
Yeah.
It's gold. Yeah.
Same deal with Rocky. If it had been some cheesy '80s, something, we wouldn't be. Sylvester Stallone would still be making porn films or something. But I love that guy. I'm not trying to throw shade. Um, okay, so let's go forward a little bit. Divine Wings of Tragedy. This isn't the record that reached the highest chart positions for you guys, but in my sort of informal survey of friends who are fans of yours, it's usually the album that they talk about the most. Why do you think that is? What switch got turned with that album, you think?
I think by that album, like we kind of knew what we were doing. Like I think we knew what what our thing was. Like on the previous album, even the first album, just because everything happened fast. I mean, it's not like the band was around for 10 years and we were developing this style or something. It happened quick. I mean, I had done that old solo record, and uh, Japanese label called and wanted to know if I had a band, and I was like, oh yeah, of course I got a band. I didn't have a band. Um, so I like try to pull it together. So the first album, yeah, just kind of seeing what what we could do. And then the second record, I think a lot. Me and Pinella having that classical thing in common was there was a little more of that kind of neoclassical thing. There was still some other, progressive, some of the Kansas and Rush and ELP a little bit, but I think on Divine, it was like, yeah, because there's stuff that's heavy, you know, and me growing up with, whatever, Sabbath and Priest and Maiden and Pantera and Metallica and Megadeth and all this stuff. There's some of that, and then there is some of the Rush and some of the progressive stuff, and yeah, there is some of the classical stuff too.
Yeah.
And even starting back then, even to touch a little bit on some of the kind of orchestral stuff that would eventually become, you know, later on the later records.
Yeah.
But I think that record, it was like we kind of knew. Like I just remember, yeah, there was times like in the studio when we were just down there goofing around, and it just there was something about it. There was like this kind of magic thing. It was like, oh yeah, man, that's kind of goosebumps on this thing, or the Accolade, and it's like, oh yeah, man, that's. There was definitely moments
Yeah.
where it felt right. It felt good.
Well, it is a record that gets pointed to and listed. Like Loudwire's got it as one of the top 25 progressive metal albums of all time. Like there's places that sort of spend their time, and I knew sometimes this is done just as from journalists, but Metal Hammer's got it ranked as the 15th best symphonic metal. I know that sometimes the tags, the genres, they're fluid, but
Yeah.
the point is that it seemed to be a step change for you guys, certainly in the minds of fans. Um, so let's roll forward. I know that there was the Twilight and Olympus. I think that's when you guys first started touring. Was that the first tour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because back then, I mean, what we were doing, here just wasn't popular,
Yeah.
wasn't happening, that kind of thing. And overseas it was. So yeah, we started touring.
Um, and then the next record, you guys are on Inside Out. Is that the first Inside Out record with the New Mythology suite?
In Europe, right? I think it was. I think it was on Nuclear. No, it was on Metal Blade here, maybe.
Okay.
Again, the COVID time warp that we're all in.
I'm asking you to remember stuff that's not fair.
I don't know what I did yesterday, bro. So I'm hanging in there best I can.
Well, at some point though, there's this major label shift. Yeah, and Inside Out. What was the difference for you guys with moving to that label? Like, did they do better marketing for you guys, better tour support? What? Because it seems like that it is a bit of an inflection point. I mean, you could argue that you're getting better as songwriters and whatnot, but I'm wondering if you can point to the label as any sort of part of the growth as you get into the next couple of records with,
Yeah, I mean, maybe, yeah, maybe a little bit, but
or more they like want you now because you're bigger.
yeah, maybe that too.
Yeah.
But it's not like, I mean, we always did what we wanted to do. We always did our thing. And yeah, I mean, obviously some labels are like, oh, we love what you do and you keep doing what you're doing. But it was never like, oh, do this or do that, or we just did our thing.
Yeah.
And still we were still, I think Divine Wings was when we kind of felt like a band. Like we kind of felt like, okay, this is our identity. This is where we're going.
Yeah.
So whatever label, I don't think it would have made any difference.
Yeah.
We still probably would have ended up at the same place, like with, by the time you get to the Odyssey or Paradise Lost, I mean, it was going to go there regardless.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were reaching that altitude where when you talk about bands that are marrying, facility on the instrument with composition and the inclusion of influences, like classical influences, there are only so many of them doing that at that level. So, it makes sense that the labels that are in that business would want you in their catalog. So we've talked about some of the narrative stuff. Let's fast forward to Paradise Lost. This is kind of another way of asking the prior question, but at this point, you've got several records out, you've done a little bit of touring. Would you account for the fact that now the industry is recognizing you? Is it that you have a fan base that's just grown with time, and so sales are helping albums hit SoundScan? What do you think is the change at that point? Because there is like this market, like all of a sudden you're all over the place on the charts.
Yeah, I mean, I think a little bit of everything, just from the years of doing the records and getting the fan base and having people come on board, and because I mean, we're doing a very specific kind of thing. It's not pop or whatever. I mean, so it's like, some people like it, some people don't.
Yeah.
But we always try to write just good songs, and maybe this song's a little heavier, or maybe this one's a little more proggy, maybe this one has some classical, and maybe da 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 da. But still always trying to do a good song. And I think we always were about the album. That's why it eventually became like the album was always a theme.
Yeah.
It's a collection, because like you were saying, I'm the same. I get a record. I'm not like going to this song. I'm freaking listening to the whole thing. I want to hear this whole, take me on this journey kind of thing.
Right.
I think Paradise Lost, yeah, because we were doing some touring and things were good. And that record, uh, production definitely up a notch. And I think it's just a little, I remember, working on that record and talking to the guys and it's like, yeah, the Odyssey, we have this big orchestral thing, and then the Five record, it's like kind of this concepty, and it's very proggy, and that one I do remember. I don't know what the hell. I mean, maybe I was listening to some old Priest or some Painkiller, and I'm like, man, when I was young, like this was the shit, and it did something, and I kind of was trying to capture that again too, and it's like that's why that record. I mean, it's definitely heavier,
Yeah.
and I think a lot. Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was just me just thinking, yeah, it's cool to do all this other stuff, and all those records always have the influences, like we're saying, Rush and Sabbath and stuff. But with Paradise Lost, I think there's something a little more.
Yeah.
I don't want to say aggressive, but there's something with the riff department going on, and I think me just thinking about when I was younger and some of those bands and those riffs and the Iommi riff or the Randy riff or Priest talking about Painkiller.
Yeah.
So some of that was kind of coming through.
Yeah.
And again, I think the songwriting we're always trying to improve, and all of us as writers trying to do something. So I think that record was like a cool click where it's like, okay, production a little better, kind of going back to the stuff that brought us here in the first place, like some of growing up with some of the metal stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just thought the songs were solid, so it did really well for us.
It did. And you're right. It has there's not kind of an edge in some of that music. It still has a lot of the components that existed before it. But I think you're right. I think the sum of the parts kind of just catapulted this record. I have to ask you about the cover. This is Warren Flanagan, right? Guy who did the Matrix Resurrections, and he's done Watchmen and a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
Did you target that dude, or how did that happen?
Nah, he was a fan.
Oh,
contacted us, and then he sends, email or something, and it's like, oh yeah, and I work on all this Marvel, and I'm like, yeah, sure you do. And then I see the thing, and I'm like, oh my god, that's freaking legit.
Yeah.
So, and yeah, he's super, super awesome dude, super talented guy, and again with all those records, he knew what we were about, so it's like, kind of just again, look, hey man, just go. Here it is, Paradise Lost, and okay, I know what to do. I'm like, I'm sure you do.
Yeah.
You do your thing. So again, it's like that thing of like just letting somebody. It's like, okay, yeah, man, just what are you feeling? Like, what does this music do for you? What are you seeing? And usually, me and him would talk about movies forever on the phone. We'd just be bullshitting for hours about all that kind of stuff because that's his world.
Yeah. Well, it's an absolutely glorious cover. Like it's still, man, holds up so strong. And he's world-class artist. That's the reason he does concepting for those major franchises. Let's talk a little bit about Iconoclast. A couple of the chart positions I didn't mention before. It was number 7 on the hard rock chart, 19 on top rock chart, number 13 on top independent chart. Like these are serious chart positions. This isn't like 199 out of the 200 or whatever. And then but I wanted to also ask you. So this is a thematic album, but near as I can tell, it doesn't have a precedent. Meaning, there wasn't a source that you were inspired by. This was, you guys having this idea. And I took this off of an interview. It says the idea of machines taking over everything and all this technology we put our society into pretty much being our demise. I don't know if that's a good encapsulation, but I was going to ask you, like, thematically, what do you think that record's addressing?
I mean, when we started talking about it and coming up with ideas. It was man versus machine. So yeah, technology or whatever. And again, some of the movie stuff coming in, or some books even, and Matrix was definitely something I was probably had in my brain rattling around. Um, what else? iRobot, any of these kind of, the Terminator, any of those kind of things.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
okay, those are cool visuals, and the music's going to be even more maybe aggressive, a little bit more edgy, and I don't want to say harsh, but
I know what you mean.
mechanical,
Yeah.
a little different.
It's I ask you about that one specifically because thematically it's kind of close to my heart. I did the novelization of Dream Theater's album The Astonishing, which
Mm.
has that as a conceit. It's very much
Hmm.
this technology in a dystopian world that sort of supplants music expression. And so the idea of machines replacing or at odds with humans is it's a theme I love. And so when I go back and listen to Iconoclast, it just had additional layers of goodness for me as a listener. I call them reader cookies, meaning like, how it's probably a tenuous analogy, but the things that I love about thematic music, that one's just firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to your solo work, and we'll just a couple of steps into the current record. I want to be sure and at least ask you a little bit about Dark Chapter. This came out the same year as the first Symphony X record, didn't it? Or pretty darn
Yeah, I
close.
mean, yeah, because that, I mean, that was something I did. I was young. I didn't really have any gear. I didn't have any really good equipment, and I
Yeah.
remember in my apartment just, you know, putting down some stuff and just having fun. And yeah, I did a little demo thing and sent it around back then to the different guitar magazines and um, that whole thing.
Yeah.
And then a little while later, uh, I get a call from Japanese record company, like, oh, do you have a band? Yeah, I got a band. Yeah, we're good. I didn't.
Yeah.
So, and then yeah, pull the guys together, and then we're off and running.
Yeah.
But that to me, yeah, man, that was just kind of a demo thing. And then they did the first record, and they're like, oh, can we just put this out? And I'm like, ah, yeah, sure, why not? I mean,
Yeah.
at the time, that's all like I was kind of able to do on my own.
Yeah.
Where now it's like you could do anything now with the technology and stuff. So
Yeah.
so
Well, I
yeah, to
was,
me, it was like a demo. Always was kind of like a demo.
and I mean, you can hear that, because I went back and listened to it, and so you can hear that the difference in technology if you fast forward to today, but there's still like there's these like breadcrumbs that you can definitely hear of Michael Romeo. So it's worth listening to, I think,
Yeah,
despite
maybe
this.
a little bit here and there. Then again, I mean, it was so long ago, and I was young, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, kind of just the beginning of the beginning of the band
Yeah.
too. So yeah, there was some of this classical thing, and then a lot of the riffs, and obviously it's all guitar stuff, and that's all cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then when get to War of the World stuff, it's like, okay, yeah, I'm still gonna do all this guitar stuff, but now I can have all this orchestral stuff, and I can have all this sound design and all these synths, and I'll throw all these different instruments on and just do this. You do so much more now.
Well, before we talk about War of the Worlds Part One, is there, when you're doing a Symphony X record versus your solo, what are the differences? Is it because you're just making all of the larger orchestration choices, or are you doing that with Symphony X anyway? So I guess I'm trying to figure out, is there some way you think about your solo work differently than you do the band?
Yeah, there's always going to be similarities. I mean, the way I'll do a riff or however I'm writing.
Yeah.
Um, Probably the big thing with the band is that like we know we have to play it live, so there's kind of limits on You know, it's like, yeah, do I want to put 100 guitar parts on there? You know, then what the hell am I going to do? How's that going to, you know, you got to reproduce it. With the solo thing, it's like, well, you know, not really thinking about any kind of live thing. So you could just do whatever you want, like total freedom to do as much as you want. And yeah, as far as the writing with the solo album, it's like, yeah, a little more of this orchestral and guitar, more extended pieces where it's that kind of thing. And even on the part one, there's like whatever this metal dubstep thing, and that's something, you know, the band would never do that. You know, I don't think they'd ever do that. So it's like things that maybe we wouldn't do, or maybe I could go a little bit more in this direction, and maybe there's some more sound design or whatever it is. So trying to make it a little different.
Is yeah, because if you were to try and pull this off live, unless you had just a hellaciously large ensemble, you'd have to play with a lot of backing tracks.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
Yeah.
But it was not, but it's not, you know, it's like it wasn't, that wasn't the end goal. The end goal was like the audio of it, the how can I say, the album itself. That's the end result.
Yeah. So what put you on this when you started to get in, and this is more recently, I think that the first War of the Worlds record came out in 2018. Is that right?
Yeah. Again,
what put you on this path for these two records that have this big cinematic palette? You know, is it something you'd always wanted to do, just didn't have time for? Was it downtime? What?
Yeah, I mean, the main thing was it was downtime. You know, Russ had been in that accident, and we weren't sure, you know, what was going to happen with the band, and so he needed some time. You know, he needed some time to sort things out. You know, I totally get it. You know, going through something like that, I can't even imagine. Yeah. So the band had some downtime, and I'm like, okay. I mean, I did have some ideas, and again, talking about like more of this cinematic stuff, and where it's just the orchestra and the guitar, or there's way more synths, or maybe there's some of this electronica or electronic kind of stuff.
Yeah,
it would be cool to just kind of smash that all together and see. So I mean, that's how it all started, you know.
Yeah.
The band had some downtime. I had a little bit of time to do it, and yeah, there was a couple of things I thought. You know, even though with the band, yeah, there is a lot of the orchestral element in the band, but with the solo record, it was like, yeah, maybe trying to even do a little more, even more of that cinematic thing.
Yeah.
And then just trying different things, you know, just trying to be creative, and that didn't matter. Just doing whatever I was feeling, just do it.
Yeah. Well, I love that you, sort of unshackled yourself. That's a really bad way to say that, but that you just kind of allowed yourself to go do this stuff, because the result in this record really does have this cinematic feel because of the layering. Even in Dino's voice, there's all of these layers going on. When you get into songs that are either principally cinematic or have these like ending codas that are very cinematic, it gives you this large feeling. It's like, you know, this is a record that people really need to just sort of sit in a dark room with their headphones on, turn it on, and let it go, because it will invoke the imagery and the feelings that the theme is taking.
I hope so. I mean, that's the goal.
Yeah,
you know, that's the goal. Like I said, if I'm sitting here writing and I'm thinking about, you know, whatever kind of visual, and I'm trying to put music to it, and it's like, yeah, I mean, if people are listening, there's something that they kind of can see that too. That's friggin' awesome.
So,
you know? But it's not shackles. I just want to say, man, not shackles. I mean,
no, that was a bad term.
Yeah,
it's just,
the band. I mean, the band, we could do whatever we want, but there is the thing where it's like we can't overdo it, because it does have to be done live. And
right.
Yeah, I mean, and the band's not going to do a dubstep song. I mean,
right.
I don't even know what the fuck I was thinking. You know, it's just.
Well,
but again, yeah, it's just trying stuff and having fun. You know, that's all it is. Just you know.
Yeah, although it might be funny as hell for you guys to rip into a dubstep section when you go out on tour.
Yeah.
Just throw people for a loop. That first War of the Worlds record, just mentioning, hit 8 on U.S. Heat Seekers albums, Billboard chart. It charted in Belgium, Germany, in Switzerland. And you used on that record, you had Rick Castellano. Am I saying his name right?
Yeah.
But you didn't use him on the second record. Was that just a desire to just expand, or?
Yeah, I mean, I knew like early on, it's like, I think I'm gonna, just try something else. And I mean, Rick is a good friend of mine, and he's an unknown guy. And I just thought it's like, when I was young, someone gave me a chance to do something. So I thought, yeah, man, I mean, he's a great guy. I think he's a great singer. And it's like, yeah, man, come on down. Yeah, he's unknown. I mean, who cares?
He did a great job on that album.
Yeah, I think really he did great. And then the second one, I was like, okay, maybe let me try something else. And I thought about that idea of maybe a different singer on every song or whatever. And then the more I thought about it, I was like, nah, I don't know if that's right for this thing. And then I thought just about who else can I get? Who else do I know? And then one day I was talking to Simone Molaroni, and he does all mixing and mastering and helps me with these records.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh man, I just called my buddy Dino. He would love to do it. And I was like, oh man, see if he'd be into it. And yeah, I mean, he was into it, and talked to him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, dude, it'd be great." And then sending some files, and then he sent in some vocals back, and I was just like, "Oh man, this is perfect."
Yeah,
perfect kind of thing. So it worked out great.
Yeah, it's a good match for sure. And I'm going to get into some specifics, but the one thing I wanted to ask, there's a note I made that you had said in an interview somewhere that a lot of the music for this record that is coming out next month was kind of already written years ago. So you've been but you wanted to kind of let the first record, I guess, sit with people for a while. So have you done some additional tinkering with this music, or have you kind of just been waiting for the time and vocalist to put it out?
No, I mean, this record has been done for about a year. Been kind of just sitting on it.
Yeah.
And the label, like, trying to figure out when the best release time, and again, the COVID time warp thing. And so like everything, the whole scheduling, everything was wacky. And yeah, like 90% was done. There was like maybe 3. I remember when I went back and I was like, okay, let me finish up this part 2. The band was going to have this tour in 2020, and the band's back, and April of 2020, I think we were going to go out. So right in the beginning of the year, I said, all right, let me just revisit this stuff. I could probably get it done real quick. And then, back the band, we're full on.
Right.
And then of course, everything just went to hell. So, yeah, I mean, it's been done for a while, and there was a couple things I did have to add. And luckily that was in the beginning of 2020 when, I could still think straight and actually, be creative without all this insanity going on.
Yeah.
So, and again, trying to make stuff different. We were just talking about making things a little different than the band. Those last couple songs, I think Destroyer was one. And I did have the riff laying around, and it really wasn't a finished song. And I thought, oh man, this is like kind of a friggin' pretty heavy riff. Maybe I'll try a 7-string on it. And it's like, oh, that's something new for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was some of that too. So some of this stuff, 3 or 4, I think it was 3 songs, I had to kind of put together a little more. But most of this, everything was done. I mean, most of it was done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When a couple of quick questions for our sort of gearheads that watch the show. Do you now, the kind of tools you use, are you like in a DAW like Pro Tools or something? Is that how you do the compositional piece of it?
Yeah, I'm a Cubase guy.
Cubase.
I mean, I'll still if it's the orchestral stuff, I'll even just grab a pencil and paper sometimes, just to see it, or Sibelius or Dorico or some kind of notation thing, because I think with that kind of stuff, I kind of need to see what's happening in the balance of the orchestra for that.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as everything else, I mean, Cubase. I've always been a Cubase guy. Cubase Nuendo guy, always.
Do
I mean,
you?
I've been using it for so long. It's like I don't even have to look. I don't even have to think about it. It's just like boom, 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 boom,
Like
which
breathing.
is cool. Yeah, it's like breathing to me, dude. It's
Is
great.
do you lay out even some rudimentary drum stuff for your drummer to at least understand some of your ideas?
Yeah, I'm like kind of stupid with the pre-production, dude. Honestly, I kind of friggin' overdo it a little because I think too, it's like, yeah, I could just put a click on there or some shitty drum beat, and some crappy sounds and, you know, but it's like I like to get it as close to as what it's gonna be,
Yeah.
and this way it's like, when you hear it, it's like, well, here's my idea, and it's like, oh wow, dude, that fucking sounds great already. It's like, all right, well now just imagine, uh, you add to that what it's gonna be.
Yeah.
See, I'm a little ridiculous sometimes with the pre-production, but again, I think that hearing just everything as it should be, or as close to as it's going to be. For me, I just think that's important.
Yeah.
I think it's everybody is like, oh shit, this sounds great now. It's like, all right, cool.
Yeah. I know a lot of composers that do that same sort of thing, and I think it is important because you can interpret something widely different. It just probably saves you some time in the
Yeah.
recording. Um, it
And
did.
even with like some synths or even some of the orchestration, some of those things that in the pre-production, it's like, oh, okay, I'll just pull them into the real project now. It's like, yeah, I might have to tweak them and really polish them.
Yeah.
So I mean, you could save some time there too. So it's always, yeah, it's a lot of work, but a lot of it you could still keep working with, and you still have it.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about some specific tracks now. The very first track, at least in the packet I got, the digital pack I got from your press people, is Introduction Part 2. It's a kind of a cinematic, really cool cinematic opening piece. This, I tell you, I don't know if you also listen to guys like Danny Elfman,
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
but
There's probably a little Elfman. There's a little Williams, a little Elfman, and
there's some
yeah,
Williams, and not let me be clear, not replication, but you can hear inspiration of places where you make melody choices that have just a little bit of a mad twist to them, and have a definite feeling about them. And Elfman's a master at that. So you've like either had those skills or built those skills in your ability to create cinematic music. But it's a man. The whole opening is just cool. You use places with flutes the same way Williams does in Star Wars, and I'm just like hearing all of this musical awesomeness. It's a great opening. Like it just sets an amazing tone. Even before you get to the first vocal suit tune with vocals. I want to talk about Destroyer. Like this has got a little bit of a Middle Eastern flair, and it is a place where you used some interesting different instruments. I was going to ask, are these instruments you just have lying around, or did you say, hey, I need these for this record?
I mean, I got a lot of stuff laying around, like all over the place, But that track, I didn't have any of those kind of instruments. So, um, I mean, I remember thinking, it's like, oh man, yeah, I could reach for some virtual instrument sample, but I'm like, I could probably just get one,
Yeah.
and fudge my way through it somehow. So yeah, I was like, okay, why not? So let me see if I can swing this around.
Yeah, let's see it.
See what we got down there. The friggin',
Oh, wow. Yeah, man.
you got all that kind of craziness going on. Yeah, fucking Vader hanging out over there. So
So the, I don't know if I'm going to mispronounce these, but you've got the oud.
yeah, let me fix this thing.
Anyway, it's spelled O-U-D.
Yeah.
It's kind of a lute, but it's fretless, right?
Yeah, fretless. Yeah.
Um,
So that was interesting the first day with that, I'll be honest, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. But I mean, if it has strings on it, usually I can
figured out.
make a sound on it, you know,
Yeah.
and it took me a little bit. And again, it's just like it's just texture for that song. You know what I mean? It's just it's not like some kind of virtuosic solo
Right.
thing, and I got to practice for months or something. It's like okay, I got the basic idea of what how this instrument works,
Yeah.
and it's just texture in there. So that's cool too. I mean, the sample stuff is, I mean, it's fantastic. The technology is so good. But I'm like, you know, there's something about the human thing that's like not perfect. And it's like, yeah, it's a little sloppy maybe, or it's not perfect, but that's what's cool about it. You know,
Exactly.
not being perfect.
Yeah. I just want to say it out loud. The other instrument, at least one of the other instruments, I think is called the saz. It's another
Yeah.
long neck lute. But I was getting this. You said you answered the question I was going to ask, which is the VIRs now are so sophisticated and so well sampled, they sound great. But the playing on an instrument, one of the things that's still I think missing, and I don't know that they'll ever replicate it, is like the way that the human expresses the music by playing it physically, um, and probably even tonally still. But it made me happy that you took the time to put these instruments themselves on there when it would have been really easy just to use a virtual instrument.
Yeah.
And you hear it, and the whole tune has this really really great textured sound, and even the rhythms, the way that, and the vocal melodies that Dino pulls off that sound very Middle Eastern. It's really cool,
Mm.
man.
Yeah.
It's done really well.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like the VIs are, you know, the virtual instruments, they are great. I mean, there's some now, especially with the orchestral stuff. It's like, you can you can get it to breathe. You know, there's things you could do, and you know, with editing and performing it in,
Yeah,
you can get it pretty believable.
yeah,
But for something like this, I'm like, and you know, it's not bad to have, you know, more shit laying around. According to me, maybe not my wife, but you know, it's like, what's this now? Are you gonna use this thing? Really? Really?
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna use it. I'll show you that I got to use it. You know, so.
yeah. I'm not quite sure where you found those. Is there?
Yeah, I mean, there was some shop, I don't know, it was in Turkey or somewhere I found online, and
Yeah,
I was like, oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
that's cool, man. Really cool. Um, okay, so Metamorphosis, one of the first singles, and maybe one of the heaviest vocal tracks on it. Um, I wanted to ask you that the this tune, more on a lyrical basis, like what are you trying to communicate with it?
Ah, that one, I think it was just trying to find cool stuff at that point,
Yeah,
you know, trying to still have this, you know, them or us, and maybe an inner struggle kind of thing. And um, I don't think I wrote any of that during all this craziness. I don't know if I did. Again, it's hard to fucking remember.
yeah. We've
But
been in this stuff 2 years now, man.
yeah, there might be a little bit in there, you know, um, but I don't think much, you know. And,
Yeah,
and I think like sometimes with the lyrics, um, yeah, I will try to make it that War of the Worlds kind of thing, and it's definitely kind of more sci-fi-ish. And then some, it's more of like maybe a metaphor. Maybe there's some other things of them versus us, and maybe it's kind of political thing, or maybe it's this, or the heart and the mind, and inner some other kind of inner struggle. So yeah, and then usually by the end I'm running out of ideas anyway, so I'm just kind of like that sounds cool,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. No, there's passages in the lyrics that um, emotionally make 100% sense, not just for the music, but for the larger idea, even if the lyric itself isn't describing like a story moment. Like, I don't know if that's just instinctive lyric writing on your part, but that's done really well on the album. And it really well on Metamorphosis.
Yeah, I
Um,
think Metamorphosis is probably the less of the sci-fi. I mean, there's always in it, or I'll try to at least get a line in there,
yeah,
you know, and something from H.G. Wells, even on Divide and Conquer, you know, Eyes of Envy, you know,
mm,
watching from afar. that kind of thing. A Metamorphosis, maybe, yeah, it's more of an internal thing. There might be a couple lines in there that do have a little bit of the sci-fi thing, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's that. It's them and us, or some kind of conflict or some kind of struggle.
Yeah. Well, this may be a personal allusion, but there's a story by Franz Kafka called Metamorphosis about this guy turns into a beetle. That's just trippy. Like I've never cried for a beetle before that story, but so these ideas have very powerful literary allusions. And that song is a killer track. I can understand why the label chose to make it one of the first singles. Mothership is a great tune where I wanted to commend you on your use of brass and timpani. Like that, yeah, dude.
Nice.
I had to re-listen to it several times. Like, what's he doing there? What's he doing there? Because I do some of my own composition, and I'm like, I totally have to understand Michael Romeo's mind here. You did an amazing job there. That one was more Elfman than the other ones for me, and I'm a big Elfman fan, so that's just a thing.
And definitely some Williams too. I think there's some polychords. I think there's some other things going on with the brass.
Yeah.
That normally, in metal, it's like it kind of doesn't work if it was just guitars, polyrhythms, or not polyrhythms, like polychords or polytonality or some more advanced kind of stuff. A guitar alone, I mean, it kind of sounds, messy or out of tune, or
exactly.
Is he playing the right note there? Something sounds fucked up. But with the brass and some of the orchestra, you can kind of get away with I mean, that thing is, total Williams or Holst or that kind of thing with the brass.
No, I love hearing you say that out loud, because there are these chords that you create there with the brass that, because of the nature of the instrument, create really some really cool tension. If you tried to play those just in a regular rock band, someone would think you made a mistake.
Yeah, it doesn't work, man.
It doesn't work.
I tried it, believe me. Yeah, I tried it. You can a little bit. You can get away a little bit, but then there's a point where you cross the line, and then it's just like, oh man, this doesn't really work.
Well, that's a great track for folks who listen to the record. I want you to just listen to it start to finish. But if you want a good sample of a lot of the good orchestral, cinematic work that Michael does, that's a good example. One of my favorite tracks. It surprised me, because my very first instinct when I heard it is, this is a little bit balladesque, but it was Just Before the Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
But then it got really surprising for me in where it went with that. And it's one of those places, I don't know if you're one of those guys like me where certain turns in music give you chills, like the change in the chords, where they go, and you can just anticipate the resolve, and then it happens. This happens for me in this song as you go into the chorus. The music is just so beautifully orchestrated. I get chills listening to it. And Dino did a great job.
Wait, did you know the changes were coming?
No.
Or were they unexpected?
No, they were unexpected. I mean, but the thing that's beautiful about this particular change, and this happens for me not often, but after I've heard the song and then I know the change is coming, the anticipation of the change is as exciting as the delight of not knowing what was going to happen the first time, if that makes sense. I would go back and re-listen to this tune several times, and I would hear this sort of this change coming, and then after the verse, there's this like chord, and then you go into this different. I didn't try and break it down on what the actual chord changes were, but it moves into something else that just gives you this release and this sense of triumph that's really powerful, Michael. And
hope, a little bit of hope.
Yeah, that's right. And it and then the way that I don't know what the combination of melodic writing here is. So I don't know how much Dino did different things, but the melodies that you wrote on top of this are unpredictable. It's not the first melodic choices you would assume with where the chords are going. And they help. I mean, they just layer on top of this thing. It's a glorious track.
Wow, thanks, man.
It really is. Like if the record company doesn't try and get behind this one, then I need to talk to someone at the record company.
Please do.
Yeah, there's some stuff there in the chorus, some high harmonies, just in spots, just to sort of build a deeper harmonic level, higher harmonic level that just does a really great job of highlighting these chordal changes. So I wanted to be sure and mention that one. Like, folks, don't go directly to that track, listen to the whole album, but
yeah, I mean, and the album needed one of those songs in the middle there to kind of, chill out a little bit. And again with Dino on that one, it's like, yeah, I mean, I had the basic idea for the melody and a basic idea for the, here's the chord and here's the basic chorus melody.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, dude, run with the ball. And then he's adding different harmonies and he's trying some different things. And, I think that's where the magic happens, when it's like, okay, here is the skeleton of the idea, and now embellish it.
Yeah. Well, the collaborative fruits on that one, I mean, all of the cinematic stuff, all of the really heavy stuff, and we'll talk about a few more before I let you go, are amazing. This was just, and this record does this in many places where there's just a different feeling. Like we talked about the track that's got this Middle Eastern flair. There are tracks that are principally just cinematic orchestration. There's tracks that are just really, really heavy. And that this is a song that is different from all of those. So this is part of what commends the record, I think, to a listener, is that it's not so monotone. It's not so like focused on only one sort of, even there's places where, and I'm not a guitarist, so I can't speak like super deeply to it, but you've chosen different guitar tones and different things you've done in different places that were such correct like choices for how the guitar should sound. Where, it was either crunchier or it was simpler, like drier, like these kinds of things. And I don't know how much you're part of the mixing process, but they by turns like went either sort of epic or intimate. And the sound of even the guitar choices there, the tones there, was part of that. It seemed to me a very considered part of the record making.
Oh no, totally, dude. I mean, yeah. I mean, again, we were talking about the demos and like how, sometimes I'm a little ridiculous because even on the demo, the guitars are doubled and there's all these layered things. But I know, because that's how it's supposed to sound at the end. So as I'm going, I mean, these choices are kind of, I mean, there's choices that you make during the process. It's like, oh, a happy accident, oh, that actually worked out.
Yeah.
But like a lot of those choices early on, it's like, I mean, the guitar tone is whatever, my guitar tone, and it's heavy, and that's 90% of the record. But then there's maybe some a little bit cleaner, or this is maybe a little bit gritty. Holding some chords back there, and maybe it's a strat in this, and I mean, it's not just like, oh, let me just plug in whatever and go for it. It's like, no, man, what would cut through here? What would serve the purpose here?
That was I can't remember the I don't know if I made a note on it, but that was the place that telegraphically or through the listening experience made me aware that you were making these choices. Is there's a place I feel like I heard a strat, and it was a simple thing. It was a softer section, but it just sounded like someone playing a song to you. And it was just it was a really great moment, and a choice that, like, I think a less accomplished songwriter wouldn't have made or not even thought to make. So that kind of stuff is part of what I think makes this album so accomplished, like, and so easy for me to recommend to friends. A couple of more things. I appreciate your time here, but I want to finish out on this World of Worlds 2.
I'm good, bro. I think this is my last one, so like,
okay,
don't try to rush it.
There's
don't be crazy.
Yeah, we don't want to go forever. There's a track called Hunted that is very cinematic too. What I want to mention about this one, though, is at about the 3-minute mark, maybe a little over, past that, there's like a breakdown section, and you get into this dreamy solo thing that is yet another moment in the record that is different from other places. And it's a moment. I think you're very well known for being able to do all kinds of pyrotechnic stuff on the fretboard. This is a moment where your melodic choices are they feel very personal. And I don't mean that to say like your heart's on your sleeve, but it communicates in a way that just feels more intimate. There's a moment. I mean, one of my favorite guitar players is John Petrucci, and he does this pretty well. And there's this moment on this record that's very like that, where it's almost like you're just kind of having this conversation with the listener with your guitar. I know that sounds super sappy.
No, I get it though. No,
get it?
I get it. Yeah, no, I totally get it, man. I totally get it. And that's usually the thing. It's like, yeah, that those kind of things, they don't have to be pyrotechnic stuff. And yeah, maybe a little bit's in there. But yeah, it's like just kind of, here comes this guitar melody. I'm like, and you're feeling it at that moment. So hopefully, that kind of conveys to the listener.
It does.
Yeah, and it's not like, oh, let me just, slop down some shit here and yeah, whatever. No, it's like, man, you got to get in there and massage it a little bit and get it going.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to say is not that there's not places where you're doing some runs, but it's never like, oh well, I remember that pattern from that exercise. It's he has a melody in his head. He has something he wants to do. It happens that he has the technical facility to do it, but the section isn't all about that. But you say you're in New Jersey?
Mm-hmm.
See, my other favorite New Jersey person is Frank Sinatra. And because I love all of that stuff. And he's that guy who he had a way of putting over a song where it just felt like he was talking to you.
Yeah. Absolutely, man. Yeah.
Yeah. He just, I listen to Seriously Sinatra on my Sirius radio almost as much as I do the metal stuff. But the point is you have that ability with your guitar. And that's for me, that's one of the highest compliments I could pay you, because being able to do that with an instrument that's not the voice, which is not, is unique. It's a unique skill. Okay. Couple of more. I'm going to slaughter this. Maschinenmensch.
Oh, Maschinenmensch.
Maschinenmensch, which means like man in the machine, right? Or
it's like friggin' robot, it's, and again, I was running out of, with the lyrics and ideas. It's like, okay, I mean, how I can only do so much. I still want to have something that maybe has a sci-fi thing, of course, to keep it within the limits of what the album is.
Yeah.
And then I was just kind of looking around at maybe some books or movies, and that song did have like a more mechanical, it was like a little bit more edgy, harsh, a little bit. And then it was like, I don't know if I saw, I don't even remember how I stumbled onto it with Metropolis, the film Metropolis. And it's like, oh, okay, and here's like, the robot android guy, whatever, Maschinenmensch. So I had to practice saying that a shit ton of times. So it sound like an idiot. I still don't know if I got it right, but yeah, it's that kind of thing,
Yeah, I'm glad you corrected me, but and I'm glad you mentioned Fritz Lang's Metropolis, because it's got the same kind of machine illusion that War of the Worlds has. But this track's sick, man. This is a really, really good cut, and definitely there's definitely on this one places where I hate to invoke the names, because I hate for anybody to think it sounds like I'm saying you are this, but you can hear like the big cinematic influences of guys like Williams on this track to me. And the fact that the fact that you have that set of skills makes me wonder if you have any aspiration to score for film.
I've done a couple films actually, kind of low budget horror, and I've actually done like some TV stuff.
Okay.
I actually know a couple composer guys that's like their gig, and like, maybe they'll pull me on to arrange something.
Oh, that's cool.
Or help something. So yeah, I mean, I love that stuff. That's fun. But this song, and I listen to this song, and like, you can say it's like, yeah, it's this or that guy, because it is. I can listen to it and it's like, all right, well, that solo part, I know where I got that from.
Yeah.
That's a Holdsworth thing, or even Metamorphosis. I mean, that's a nod to Rush. That's a nod, me taking my hats off to Rush and putting a little bit, you're not stealing it, but yeah, I mean, it has the essence of that.
That's right.
So yeah, I mean, you could say I'm not offended because these are things that I grew up with, and I'll come up with a riff and I'll be like, yeah, that's friggin' Dimebag thing, but it's cool. I'll make it my own,
Yeah,
or it's an Iommi thing, or it's a Sabbath thing, because that's like what we learned. I mean, that's how I learned by
for sure.
doing it.
Well, we're of like minds there. I have lots of influence of my own. It's impossible for me not to write things that are going to have echoes of that.
Yeah.
But you've chosen or naturally had an affinity for some of the greats, how do they say it? Standing on the shoulders of giants things. And it is in the breakdown on this particular song is my favorite. I think some of my favorite work that Dino did on the record. Some of the runs that he does, he's able to do. Some of some of it feels very spontaneous. I don't know if like you wrote all of these out, or if these are some of the places where.
What song we talking about? Which song? Which song?
Machine and Mensch.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Did I get it right? Somebody's gonna write in and say, "You gringo, this is not." But yeah, there's in the breakdown section there. There's some stuff that Dino does that's just some of the, and it's not necessarily because he's hitting the highest note or he's got the most amount of growl inside of his voice. Sometimes it's just the way that the melodic line resolves against the instrumentation or a particular run that he does. And I'm sure that there's some combination of what you gave him and maybe some little nuances he added, but it's probably my favorite section with Dino, because I know Dino. I've had him on the show, and I know his voice well enough to know, the range of cool things he can do, and I love listening to it all. But there's some places here where I heard him do things I hadn't heard him do before, so that's a cool element of this record. For both.
And I think that happens when, I know the section you're talking about, and yeah, I did have just a very basic. Here's kind of the melodic phrase I'm seeing, and then again, it's like, just go with it.
Yeah.
And then that's when those things start to happen. And usually at the end result is great. So yeah, like I said before, man, he did a friggin' awesome job. Just awesome.
Yeah, he did a great job on this record. I hope this won't offend you, but there's some places in the Parasite that remind me of Dream Theater.
Really?
Yeah. There's
I was going to say Slayer, but okay.
No. Well, there's some places in that tune that remind me of the Astonishing in particular, and some of the musical choices. And but for me, anybody who knows me, like, I can't give a better compliment than that, just because I'm a fan of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, me too, dude. I mean, they're fucking great band. So it's all a compliment. I mean, that one's definitely a little heavier. I thought you were gonna say, it's friggin' Slayer or something. But
well, there's some. Yeah, I'll go back and listen to it, and I'll have more ideas later. But
if it's Dream Theater too, I mean, I'm cool with that, because again,
yeah,
great band.
Well, and I never want to draw, unnecessary correlations. That's not the purpose of me using things that I hear. It's usually I mention them only because they're a reflection of tastes or great musicians, and so that's why I invoke those names. Brave New World outro is killer. It's very somatic, very Williams. Yeah, man, I know that you're never going to perform this live, but there's a little part of me that hurts that you're not going to.
I mean, don't say never. I mean, you never know.
Yeah.
But when we were talking about it before, it's like, yeah, it would be kind of a,
yeah,
big undertaking, because you're putting this record together, not thinking there's no limits on whatever. So it's like, okay, yeah, we got to do this live. It's like, oh man, all right. It's going to take a minute to sort it out. So, I mean, you never know, but the intention never was. So, yeah, in a song like that, there's synths, there's all kinds of percussion, there's, 20 million things going on.
Yeah. Yeah. The only way to do something like that is to have some of it on backing track, and it'd have to be more like a presentation, you know, and but I could see it, man. I could see you doing something wildly ambitious with cool visuals and putting a night together that's you know, part theater experience almost. I mean, they did this with Ariane, some of his stuff, because he doesn't usually tour his stuff. They did some big shows and just this monstrous production. So you should definitely spend all your money on that.
What money? After the last 2 years, what money are we talking about here?
Yeah,
because,
yeah.
you know,
Sorry,
I
yeah.
mean, I think right now, for me, Symphony X, we have this tour coming up in May.
Right.
And like that's like what I'm looking forward to, kind of getting back to touring and all that stuff, because you know the other thing is like, oh, you know what's going on with Symphony X record, and I've been talking to the guys, you know, I've been talking a lot, and it just feels slower than normal, and it feels a little weird because we just haven't, you know, we haven't played. Last time we were on tour was the end of 2019.
Yeah.
So it's like you're trying to, you know, think about that stuff and just doing band stuff. And we haven't for so long. And so that whole process is going slow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going.
You're talking about a new Symphony X record?
Yeah, I'm talking about a Symphony X record, yeah. Okay. But I think the tour coming up, I think when more normal things start happening, things will feel more normal. I mean, it will be easier for me. I mean, I'll come down here every day and I'm trying to write something. You know, I was talking to Russ and LaPon the other day. I'm like, yeah, man, I got a couple things. I haven't found that thing yet that's totally inspiring, you know, and then God forbid I put the friggin' TV on for a minute with the news or something. I'm like, oh my God, you know, what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
And talking to guys in Europe and friends and over there, it's like they're not sure. And maybe some places are opening up, but some aren't. And so there's this uncertainty. And you just want to come down here and do band stuff and be a band and write songs. But then in the back of your mind, it's fucking with you. It's like, oh, well, yeah, but you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You might not, you know, who knows? So there's that thing. And it really sucks. I mean, I know a lot of musician friends of mine, the same thing. They're like, yeah, man, it's like hard to get inspired and I'm not feeling motivated. And I'm not sure if this tour is going to happen or these festivals. And so like, yeah, there's just some of that shit going on. But I think for us, once we start touring again, I think everything will start to,
yeah,
you know, you'll have that fire again, you know, like right now it's just like, oh man, what the hell are we doing?
What you're describing, it's interesting because I spend a lot of my time in this very chair, either composing or writing fiction.
Me too. Fucking right over there.
Right there. And so in some ways, the pandemic didn't change my day very much, but there's a sort of mental and emotional exhaustion about it. Whether it's your world's delimited on what you can do or where you can go, or you know, the news, like you talked about, you turn on the news and it's kind of a stream of crap, you know, just awfulness. And you kind of feel powerless against most of it, but it's takes a lot of emotional fortitude just to kind of suffer through the pandemic. And at least that's how I've been feeling. So I can imagine, you know, trying to be inspired to write a new Symphony X record would be a challenge.
Or anybody or any kind of record or anything, because the things for me like that are associated with that, you know, being in front of a crowd, and you know, there's been times that we're working on a song, and it's like, oh, you know, when we do that one live, you know, this thing happens, and it's such a great crowd moment, and you know, and you're working on new stuff, and maybe some of that comes into your mind. It's like, oh yeah, this would be cool, and I could see this happening. But since it's been so long, you know, the fucking time warp thing, it's like, you know, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I kind of remember, but you know, so it's just it feels so distant, and just us not being around each other, and it's just a slow process. I mean, it's always a slow process because I think we all care about what we do.
Yeah.
We always try to make it really good, but now you throw this on top of it, and it's like, wow, this is like really, I'm like digging deep, man, to try to get some fire.
Well, I'll tell you that then this record, War of the Worlds Part 2, I think release date's March 25th. Do I have that right?
That sounds right.
Comes at a good time for a lot of music fans, because it is Michael, it's a great record. It's a great
Thanks.
record.
No, I appreciate it, dude. I really do.
And people, your fans are going to love it. Symphony X fans are going to love it. But my hope is that through things like this, that we can interest some folks who maybe haven't heard your stuff before, because there's so many entry points to the music here. While I prefer people listen start to finish, there's tracks here I think could draw someone in, because there's just a lot of variety in this. I mean, it's a metal record. There's a lot of metal on it, but there's a lot of other stuff too. So I don't want to like a metal fans. I don't want you to dissuade you. Like there's a lot of metal for you here, but there are tracks here that are, I mean, I think some of the best expressions of other sides of your compositional life that could commend it to a lot of potential fans. So we'll do our best to help there. I know you've got the record or the tour coming up. What's besides that? Is there anything next for you? I know you talked a little bit about a Symphony X record. Are there other big collaboration things, stuff that's waiting for you?
No, nothing really now. I think as we get closer to May, the big thing is going to be, getting back into rehearsal with the band, because it's been so long. So, I mean, it's like, it's going to be a little rusty.
Yeah.
I'll do my best, but I might be sucking the first couple practices, and it's like, trying to get it all going. So that's the thing, because that's the thing that it's like, yeah, I can write down here and I could still do some music stuff. And yeah, even though it feels weird, trying to really be creative and trying to be inspired by anything, because everything's a friggin' mess. But like actually touring and being with the guys, I mean, since it's been so long, I'm really looking forward to it, and just being, just playing for people and, talking to people and seeing people having a good time. I mean, like no one has in like the last 2 years, really. It's been kind of rough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the only show I've seen in over 2 years was the Dream Theater show. They finally got on the road and they came through town, but it's, it's not to put too fine a point on it, but particularly with this kind of music, big part of the culture is going to shows together, and so I think a lot of metal fans, like where they've not had the opportunity because bands can't tour, we feel the malaise, all of that. So my last question for you is this: you've done some scoring, which I wasn't aware of for TV and film. We know all your musical stuff in bands, but is there a mount? I call it the mountain you want to climb. It might not be creative at all. It might be you want to. I think Russell built a boat in his backyard.
Yeah.
But is there a thing that you want?
He sure did. He's
like,
the best.
I don't know. Maybe you want to be an actor, or maybe you want to be a lawyer. Is there something that in your future that?
You ready?
Yeah. Let's hear it.
You ready? I mean, I love cooking, right?
Yeah.
I'm all about fucking barbecue pitmaster.
Okay.
I mean, I got my smoker outside. I mean, that kind of stuff. Doing some brisket and ribs. Yeah.
That sounds great to me.
I dabble in it. I'm not like one of these, pro guys, but
yeah,
that's fun stuff. I mean, down here, it's like, yeah, man, maybe I'll learn to play the cello or some of these other goofy things, and that's cool.
Sure.
But outside of music, this Toyland down here, some of that stuff, because I love cooking. No one else in the house cooks but me anyway, so I kind of had to learn.
Okay.
And then started getting into all the grilling and the smoking and all that kind of stuff. And
do you have one of those? I forget what they call it. There's a particular brand, but it takes
Traeger
pellets.
Traeger. Yeah, I got a Traeger.
Okay. Yeah, you're
big old Traeger out there, dude. I'm not fucking around.
You're not. That's serious. That's serious grilling up, man.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
That's just cool stuff. Something so different. You can sit out there and it's going to take 8 hours to smoke this meat, and you just get your chair and have a beer and just kind of chill out. It's a nice day. And
yeah.
That's fun stuff, man.
That sounds like exactly the thing we need to do more of to
everybody
close
does,
out this damn pandemic.
Yeah.
A little mental relief. Well, dude, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, it's been great, man.
I want to say one more time, you know, I usually pretty heavily editorialize who I talk to on the show. I don't just do them. So usually I get to have pretty cool conversations, but this record, it hits all of my buttons because I love the orchestral stuff. And you're so good at this cinematic songwriting. This record, I expected it to be good, but for me, it was truly a delight to get to listen to. And so I want folks, like if you're going to listen to something this spring, make this record part of it. I'm sure it's all in all the places.
And I think like you were saying too, I mean, it's a lot of metal, and there's some, progressive rock, and then there's like this classical cinematic symphonic element. There's some electronic stuff, and and every song's a little different, and it's not just a bunch of stuff thrown together. I mean, like the songwriting always trying to have a good chorus, and the music is progressing throughout the record, and some different instruments coming in.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think too, it's like if you like metal stuff, I mean, you'll probably find something you like. If it's maybe a little more progressive, there's something there. Or if you love film music or any kind of this late romantic 20th century classical, there's little hints of that. So there's something there, I think, for everybody.
And what you said there, I neglected to say earlier, I think, and so I just want to emphasize it so that it doesn't get lost to our viewers. And that is that all of these moments that we've talked about across the various tracks where you're doing cinematic work or you're doing these different flavors of songwriting, they're never horn-shoot in. They always, like, one of the things you're pretty expert at is transitions. And so there's places where you've been in a pretty aggressive sort of heavy thing, and then there's this, like, you're not even aware of it. In fact, there's places where I suddenly realized I was listening to something cinematic, and I said, how did he get here? And I would rewind and I would listen to how you created these transitions in order to go into a different place sonically. It's masterfully done. So it's not this isn't Legos. This is really, really artfully crafted. And I think, Michael, the thing about this for me is there are tons of guys, like, you can go to YouTube, there's tons of guys that are fast. Like, there's so many fast guys. The thing that it's this third gear that you possess the ability to hit, where you take all of that and musicality and write songs. It's the songwriting that elevates your music. So I'm happy to have gotten a chance to talk to you, to listen to this record, and to commend it to anybody. And I've got tons of friends. They're begging me for a pre-release listen. I said, no, not doing it. I'll get blackballed by the press people. But day one, we'll do a listening party.
All right. Yeah, come down here to Jersey. I'll make you some brisket. We'll fucking crank up some tunes, bro.
Dude, that's tempting. All right, man. Hey, do me one quick favor. Stay on the call after I play the outro, just so I can say a personal goodbye.
Okay, yeah, man, absolutely. I'm here.
All right.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure, though. Really, it was a good time.
Dude, pleasure was mine. Thank you.